Hi, this is Pastor Browers. We are going to continue forward learning about two of the major prophets in the Bible major prophets that don't get their own book of the Bible, like named after them, like Elijah or Jeremiah. Those are major prophets with books. But this is about Elijah, Jah, and Elisha, Sha. Elijah came first, then Elisha came second. Sometimes, just to make it clear that I'm talking about the difference between these two, I'll say Elijah and Elisha, because that's how some people say that name. So that I might do that today, just because that way you know exactly who I'm talking about, because Ja and Sha just sound pretty the same, right? So I'll say Elijah and Elisha. But first, we're going to talk about there's this same enemy, or this a king that was a real pain in God's rear end, even though he set him up in charge. This is King Ahab, and just like King David was considered the best king of history in the Israelite, according to the Israelites, King Ahab was considered by far the worst king. The most wicked, most evil king. We're going to go to 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 16. Chapter 16, verse 29. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria over Israel 22 years. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. He not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, but he also married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and worship him. He set up an altar for Baal in the temple of Baal that he built in Samaria. Ahab also made an Asherah pole and did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than did all the kings of Israel before him. Let's see. I think that's where I ended it. Yeah. So, Ahab. And here's another name, Jezebel. King Ahab, Queen Jezebel are just known for the rest of the Bible as the worst. In fact, in the book of Revelation, Jezebel makes her appearance, like they name the spirit of Jezebel, or just like this, just to personify, to be a symbol of all the horrible things that are happening. King Ahab, Queen Jezebel, those are two names to remember. They're just the worst. Remember, from last time, we've got the northern kingdom, which is Jeroboam, and there are 10 tribes up there. The king's divided after Solomon. And then Rehoboam is the king in the south. That has 2 tribes. Jerusalem is the temple there, that has the tribe of Levi, and then Judah. So as you might have noticed, maybe you didn't notice, you just didn't know what you were listening to, but it'll say, said he's the king of Judah. What that's talking about is Judah is talking about the southern kingdom, because that's where the big tribe is. Just so you know, that's what it's talking about. So but if you're king over Israel, that's talking about just wait, did I say it wrong? It's the north. North is Israel, Jeroboam. South is Rehoboam and Judah. Sorry if I messed that up earlier. You'd think I know my difference between up and down, north and south. I just got to tell you a little story from one of my kids. We were talking about how it was hard to remember where the different states were and everything, and one of my kids say, yeah, I just can never remember what's on top, North Dakota or South Dakota. And we all just died laughing. Because there's a lot of things that are hard. That's not one of them. But I guess it was harder for me than I thought. All right, so let's move on. We learned about King Ahab, bad King Ahab, and Queen Jezebel. And we're going to learn about Elijah, the prophet Elijah. Chapter 17 of 1 Kings, right? 1 Kings. Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, as the Lord the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have ordered the ravens to feed you there. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. So Elijah's a cool dude. He's like he's gangsta. That's what I like to say. He's just sort of in your face. He's just kind of well, I don't know if you know much about John the Baptist. In the New Testament, John the Baptist was that guy out in the wilderness eating bugs, dressed in camel's hair and stuff, and he was like, "You brood of vipers, you gotta repent. Get on your knees to repent." It's just kind of in your face and not really worried about hurting people's feelings. Well, it says that John the Baptist was Elijah reborn. He had the spirit of Elijah. So Elijah is kind of like John the Baptist, but the old version, okay? So, the old version. So let's keep reading, starting at verse 7. But why did I say that? Well, he's like, you know what? King Ahab, it's not going to rain unless I say so. That's what he said. I mean, he's just like, he just comes up with this stuff. It's like, what? It's not going to rain except at my word. And God's like, okay, sounds good to me. And he just fulfills what Elijah the prophet says. And that we'll come back to that a little bit later because it's interesting, So since it was going to rain and Ahab was going to be really mad, God's like, okay, you hang out here in this ravine, and I'm going to send ravens, birds. I'm going to send them to go feed you. First of all, that's kind of gross, It's like a bird drops meat for you. It's like, is that mine? It's like, so he drank from a brook and he ate the bread and the meat that the ravens brought him. Now we're going to learn about a widow. Verse 7. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. That was Elijah's fault. Verse 8. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath of Sidon and stay there. I have commanded a widow in that place to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may have a drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." What's she saying there? Just like, I'm so poor, this is our last meal. Okay? So what she's saying is no. First of all, no. I am about to eat my last meal. I'm going to feed my son and I'm going to feed myself, and then we're going to die. Verse 12, Elijah. "As surely as the Lord your God lives," I just did that. Verse 13, my bad. Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make me a small cake of bread from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord gives rain on the land." So think about what he is telling her. It's like, no, okay, fine. It's your last meal. Well, before you eat your last meal, make me a little something, okay? It's like, he's got some courage. Let's put it that way. You know what I could say. He's not afraid to say whatever he wants to say. Let's put it that way. And in verse 15, it says, she went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family, for the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word the Lord had spoken by Elijah. So she didn't starve. She just kept feeding Elijah and herself and her son. They never had to die. Verse 17. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" "Give me your son," Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, have you brought tragedy also upon this widow I am staying with by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried to the Lord, "O Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down to the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, "Look, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." I like to think, you know how they say mic drop? It's like I just said something amazing, mic drop. I like to see him coming down the stairs with this kid who was just dead and be like, I'm going to just son drop. Like, look at this, he's alive. Elijah just says this stuff and does this stuff. It's just out of this world. Crazy, amazing stuff. He's very famous in the Bible. All right, so that's done with chapter 17. We're going to move on to chapter 18, to the event that Elijah is most well known for. He's on Mount Carmel. And no, that's not from the game Candyland. It's not Mount Carmel, like a mountain of chocolate and caramel. That's just the name, Mount Carmel. Verse 17. So 1 Kings, chapter 18, verse 17. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" That's Ahab. King Ahab happens to be in the area here. When he saw Elijah, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." All right. 400 prophets of Baal, who's the false god. 400 prophets of Asherah, who's that other false god like Aphrodite. So we got Ahab and his 450 prophets. Jezebel, Queen Jezebel, and her 400 prophetesses, I guess, or prophets. And he's like, okay, 852 against me. I like those odds because it's me and God. He just says, bring them all. We're going to have a competition here. So verse 20. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let them choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God." Okay, I'm just trying to keep you up to date what's going on here. They're setting up 2 altars. This is what they would do, right? In the Old Testament, they would sacrifice a burnt offering, an animal, to God. So Elijah says, okay, we're each going to do this. You 850, you do it, and I'll do it over here. You pick the bull. I don't care. Just kill 2 bulls. You get your choice. And we're going to you call on your God, and I'll call on the Lord. And whoever sends fire down from heaven to burn up this offering, that's the real God. So they said, what do you say is good? Verse 25. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but don't light the fire." So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "O Baal, answer us," they shouted, but there was no response. No one answered, and they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened." I just have to stop again. I love this story. It's so great. Just so you know, the term busy, when he says, is he busy? Actually, the Hebrew term is saying, like, he's in the bathroom, like he's indisposed. He's like he's pooping. Maybe God's pooping, and that's why he's not answering you. Okay. which is hilarious. That's what Elijah does. He just taunts them. Like, come on. Is he traveling? Is he in the bathroom? Is he taking a little too long? Is he asleep? You should just shout louder. That's what's going to happen. That's how you're going to wake up your God. Finally, it says in verse 28, so they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed, because they were saying, God, I'll cut myself if you do what I say. Do what I say. Oh, I'm bleeding, and their God is still not doing what they wanted. 29. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. F for fail for the prophets of Baal and the prophets of Asherah. 850 plus Ahab and Jezebel. 852 verses 1. We're going to see how Elijah does. Verse 30. Then Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which was in ruins. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, your name shall be Israel. With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, fill 4 large jars with water, and pour it on the offering and on the wood. Do it again, he said. And they did it again. Do it a 3rd time, he ordered, and they did it the 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. Why did he do that? Well, think about it. What's he going to do? He's going to ask God to send down fire to burn up this offering. So again, he tries to make it as difficult as possible. Because the point is, he's saying, now, these people, they're going to think, if the fire gets started, they're going to say, well, maybe that just happened. Spontaneous combustion. So he's like, no, we're going to pour water over it, so much water that there is no way that bull is just going to spontaneously catch on fire. If the fire comes down, it's going to be from God. There's no other explanation. Verse 36. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, O Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate, that means on their faces, and cried, the Lord, he is God! The Lord, he is God! Then Elijah commanded them, seize the prophets of Baal, don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered them there. And Elijah said to Ahab, go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain. So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. Go and look toward the sea, he told his servant, and he went up and looked. There is nothing there, he said. 7 times Elijah said, go back. The 7th time the servant reported, a cloud as small as a man's head is rising from the sea. So Elijah said, go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, a heavy rain came on, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came upon Elijah, and tucking his cloak into his belt, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. Well, anyway, that last part probably I didn't need to read. But in any case, the point is, why did he do this? He wanted to prove to all of God's people that God was alive. There's only one true God. And he will answer them. So, we're going to go to chapter 19 and 1 Kings 19 and read about what happens next. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. She's going to come and kill him. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the desert. He came to a broom tree, sat under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. He said, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into the cave and spent the night. 40 days and 40 nights. A long time. That's what it's trying to get at. And then we're going to keep reading. And the word of the Lord came to him, "What are you doing here in this cave, Elijah?" Verse 10. He replied, "I have been very zealous," which means passionate. "I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu son of Nimshi king over Israel, and anoint Elisha son of Shaphat from Abel-Hamelah to succeed you as prophet. Jehiel will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael, and Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and all whose mouths have not kissed him." All right, there's a lot to talk about here, really, but Elijah's like, "I'm the only one. I'm the only one, God, who loves you. The rest of the Israelites, they suck. They're horrible, and now they're trying to kill me. If they kill me, God, no one will be left to follow you." And I love this because God's like, sit down, boy. I mean, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. I've always reserved people that have not bowed down to Baal. You may not know them all, but there's a remnant. And this is an important concept from the Old Testament into the New Testament. God always saves a remnant. No matter how horrible his people are, there are always a few. Okay? There's always a few that don't fall off the deep end. Have you ever heard here later in the New Testament, the path to destruction is wide, so walk the narrow way. The path to life is narrow. But there's always going to be some people that take that path, that trust in God, that trust in Jesus. Even though most people, you might feel in your life like you're the only one. You're the only one who does something. But the truth is you're not the only one. I'm going to give you a story that has nothing to do this with, but I hope it gets to the point. When I was growing up, I wanted to wait to have sex before I was married. Okay, maybe that's TMI, right? Sorry. But that's what I want to do. This is really important to me. I wanted to wait until I was married. I didn't really have too many problems with that because nobody really wanted to date me in high school. So I didn't have a lot of opportunities to put this to the test. But when I got to college, it seemed like every girl I would date was more than interested in having sex. And I was like, no, I'm going to wait until I'm married. But by the end, I was like, give me a break. Am I the only person on the face of this planet who wants to wait until I'm married? Until guess what? I met my wife. And I told her this, and she's like, I'm waiting too. And I was like, what are the chances? Because when we went to talk to my pastor, or our pastor, he was like, you know what? I marry people all the time. It was at a campus ministry, and he said, you're like two of the only people who are waiting until they're married. But what I'm saying is, there's always somebody. It doesn't matter what you think. If you're being faithful to God, there's somebody else trying to be faithful to God too. Like Elijah, he wasn't alone. There were lots of people. In fact, 7,000. I mean, maybe that's not a lot compared to how many Israelites there were, but there were people there, and he was not alone. And now he says, you got to find this prophet Elisha, and he's going to be the next one. So we're going to learn about Elisha. 1 Kings, chapter 19, verse 19. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," he said, "and then I will come with you." "Go back," Elijah replied. "What I have done," or "Go back?" Elijah said, "What have I done to you?" So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his attendant. So imagine, Elijah just goes up and throws his cloak on and it's like, "You come with me." And Elisha's like, I gotta finish my work here. And he's like, "What are you talking about? You're gonna be the next prophet of Israel. Leave that stuff behind." So immediately Elisha goes, kills all the oxen, burns all the meat, feeds the town, and leaves. Amazing stuff. We're gonna go to 2 Kings chapter 2 to learn a little bit more. 2 Kings chapter 2. Where are we? Okay. So, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and said, "Do you know the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha said, "but do not speak of it." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied, "but do not speak of it." I think it's hilarious that it's like all these prophets, it's like, we know that God's going to take him. It's like, how annoying would it be to be with a bunch of prophets who know exactly what's going to happen in the future? You're like, yeah, I know, I'm a prophet too. We all know that this is going to happen. Don't bother me. Verse 6, Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. 50 men of the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan River. That's important. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over on dry land. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken from you." "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "Well, you have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet, if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel!" And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them apart. He picked up the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. Then he took the cloak that had fallen from him and struck the water with it. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho who were watching said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. All right. I think that's as far as I wanted to go there, right? I believe so. Verse 15? Yep. So just a few things to say. So since Elisha saw Elijah go up into heaven, he got his spirit. He got that power from God that God had given to Elijah. Now it's resting on Elisha. So he's just as powerful, even maybe more powerful than Elijah, according to that double portion. Interesting that it happens at the Jordan River, because remember I talked about John the Baptist? Do you happen to remember where John the Baptist was baptizing people, like where he baptized Jesus? John the Baptist showed up baptizing in the River Jordan. And that's part of the reason why they say he had the spirit of Elijah, because the last time Elijah was seen was at the Jordan River. By the way, something else interesting about Elijah, he didn't die. Like everybody dies. Elijah was just taken into heaven by these chariots of fire. It's kind of cool. I just got to tell you this one little story. I think it's kind of interesting. It's chapter 2 of 2 Kings, starting at verse 23. From there, Elisha went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some kids, came out of the town and jeered at him. "Go on up, you bald head," they said. "Go on up, you bald head." he turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the youths, and he went on to Mount Carmel, and from there returned to Samaria. It's like, you call me bald? You calling me bald? Fine, curse you. And then these bears come out and like maul them, like attack them. I mean, he's just like Elijah. I mean, it's not funny. But it is kind of funny, you know? It is kind of funny. In fact, stories like this were why there are certain old Christians that were heretics. That means that we don't follow their teachings. They taught things not right. And some of them were like, stories like that makes God look bad. The fact that he would listen to Elisha and send bears to attack kids because they were teasing someone for being bald. If we have a God that does that, we want to take that story out of the Bible. We're just going to cut that part out. We believe that's heresy because the Bible, we get to keep all those stories, whether we like them or not. We're not going to pretend that they don't exist. The final thing I want to teach you is from 2 Kings chapter 5, starting at verse 1. We're going to try to do it quickly. Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. "By all means go," the king of Aram replied. "I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents. You know what? I'm going to run out of time. I better just tell you the story. You can read to the end of verse 14. But the deal is Elisha was asked to heal Naaman, who had this leprosy. And they just sent a messenger, and Elisha's like, just have him go wash in this river, right? Where is it? Wash yourself in the Jordan 7 times. And Naaman's like, what? I thought he was going to come out and like heal me. I don't want to just take a bath. I've taken lots of baths. And finally his servant's like, you know what? If he had told you to do something hard, you would have done it. Just do what he says. And so he washed 7 times in the river, and guess what? He was healed. It just shows some of Elisha's power. He did the same little thing with the oil that Elijah did. And now this is stuff, the healing, the prophecy, the parting the water. Elisha was just as great, if not greater, than Elijah. And that's kind of a cool story. So I love this, if you can't tell. Elijah and Elisha are pretty awesome prophets. I hope you learned something today and had a lot of fun, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.